Hi everyone, this is Devleena welcoming you all to another exciting episode of Icons Behind Brand and with an interesting series which is Iconic Ads with Devleena and Saurabh. And I have my expert co-host with me, Mr. Saurabh Bajaj. Hi Saurabh.
Hi, absolutely great to be here again.
Yeah, glad to be with you again, Saurabh. And I'm excited to announce our guest for today is Theresa Ronnie, who is a head of strategy and business at Bombay Breed. Hi, Theresa.
Hi, Theresa.
Hi.
Welcome to Icons Behind Brands. Yeah, happy to have you here. So, before we get into the conversation, our viewers and listeners would love to know about you, about your background and your involvement with the brand.
I come with 19 years of having worked in the advertising industry. My focus has been to build brands, to work with great teams that have built great brands. And I have done that. I've been very lucky to have done that in really good different organizations. I started my career in HTA, which then became JWT. I've worked with Rediffusion. I've worked with Bates Gulf, which was the BPG network, Burnett, Publicis, and then FCB Ulka. I left advertising from FCB Ulka a couple of years ago, in the thick of the pandemic. And I set up a small business consulting company called Bombay Breed. I have a few clients that I work with quite regularly, one of which is KPMG India. So what had happened with advertising was, advertising is downstream marketing. There is a life cycle for marketing and advertising. While from a leadership perspective, conversations start 6 months, 1 year ahead of what we end up outputting. But in reality, it still is a downstream part of the marketing function. And I was very eager to go upstream in my conversations with clients. The same clients that I was having conversations, I wanted to go upstream, start looking at larger business solutions and larger business problems that one could solution for. I'm very thankful for the training that I have had in advertising, for the structure and the reigning in chaos, let's put it that way, creative chaos. Advertising has taught me and given me the guardrails for. And I've had a fantastic journey and I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing brands. Today we are going to be picking up Heineken. From an iconicity perspective, it's an extremely iconic brand, known world over. Been in existence for almost 150 years, and I was very lucky to have had almost 4-year stint with Heineken while I worked at Publicis, and my client was United Breweries. Today, Heineken owns the Indian subsidiary United Breweries, but at that time they were still taking over, and I've been lucky to be part of that journey.
My name is Ronnie D'Souza. I work as a musician.
Well, I would have loved him to go into science or be a doctor.
My passion is dance.
Actually, I wanted her to become a doctor.
He's like, I sent you to become an engineer, but suddenly you've come with this worm of being an actor.
If he wants to marry the girl of our choice, then very difficult to find a bride for a boy who is working in entertainment industry.
It's a mistake on our part because we let them think independently. So now it's like, even when we want to help them out in the right way, they are not ready to listen to us.
We do have open discussion.
Absolutely not.
All right, guys. Are there any engineers in the audience? Do you hear the sadness in their voice? That is the sound of lifelong rejection. Yeah, I know, because I am an engineer as well. By choice. My dad's choice. That's the thing with Indian parents, They want you to be doctors, CAs, lawyers, engineers. Why? क्योंकि नहीं तो शादी वाले वेबसाइट के प्रोफाइल पे कौन क्लिक करेगा? But what they don't realize is that Forcing us to be CAs, doctors, lawyers is not the solution because women will not be impressed by that. So, has a girl ever come up to you and been like, "Hi, the way you coded that Java last night, oh my gosh, it just blew my mind."
Yeah, so this actually, Devleena, this is where it started. So maybe we can start with this. This was the context, the global backdrop for Heineken, right?
Okay.
Now you know why this is just not relevant to India. Because look, when you're already a soft target. You're a beer maker. People do not have the kind of crazy loyalty to you that, say, a Kingfisher was demanding at that time. You are a soft target because you're actually a space which is unconstitutional. You can be attacked anytime and you're a soft target. You're sitting there, right? You're a sitting duck. So you are not allowed to have a conflagrating view on anything. You need to be very soft. These are all cultural sort of backdrop nuances that only when you work in the local context that you can bring to the table. And then you talk to the global and say, look, we understand that Europe and the US are in different levels of social conversation, right? And your brand has been established and your brand has a certain untouchable iconicity in your markets. In India, the brand is not untouchable. And in India, we do not have these kind of conversations because cultural issues that plague India are different than the cultural issues that plague the West. We are fighting over basic security.
How Snickers came in with "You are not you when you are hungry." They did these random films with Urmila and Rekha saying that you become into a diva, and I'm sure nobody got the hang of it. And all they were trying to do is try to replicate a global proposition without trying to do the fact search as to what does that even mean in our market. In a market where we go hungry at the drop of a hat, we already do our our vrats, and Devleena skips food only when she's recording. And trying to tell them you become a diva when you are hungry, it's like insane, right? It has no logic in our market,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So hence,
And you're very right, because food security
right,
cannot be taken for granted in this country. I mean,
Absolutely.
every child is told, if my son leaves a handful of food in his plate, the first thing he's told is there are so many people who don't get this food.
Yes.
Please eat.
Correct.
So coming from that place, and if you're absolutely right. So you understand what the disconnect is, and then on top of it you add. So if Snickers was having a relevance issue in the market, now Snickers did not have a relevance issue, right? And it was not a soft target simply because it was not using, for example, Snickers was not using bhang in its ingredients, for instance, right? So you did not have that kind of a problem of acceptance and ingredient-based problem. So we were basically soft treading over eggshells already as alcobev manufacturers, and this would bake that soft target into a hard target on United Breweries and on Heineken at any point if we did something that wasn't, sort of a parallel track would do. So we spent a year basically breaking down their thinking, helping them see India for what it is. We got them to come to India. We got them to see where Heineken actually sells. When you look at sales figures and you look at the sales dashboard, when you look at a unified India dashboard, you're going state to state, right? But what you need to do is keep double-clicking to see actual feeder markets and actual catchments from where your business is coming. And when you keep doing that and you keep going down, you realize that the India that is consuming Heineken is not sitting in South Bombay. South Bombay is not consuming, right? Okay. Bangalore, UP City and Lavelle Road is not consuming Heineken. Who's consuming Heineken is the guy sitting in a 14-kilometer catchment away from the city. Right? And the it's coming from wine shops. It's coming from smaller little night bar kind of environments. So if you wanted to go South Bombay and talk to South Bombay, wanted to talk to Central Bangalore customer, which is what every brand wants to do. They want to talk to the ambition, the aspiration of the middle class by pegging it on the upper middle class. It would not work here and your strategy would fail because firstly, your product is not cheap. You are not selling at 80 rupees. You're selling at 140 rupees and you are not delivering. So if a person wants to get drunk, so here's the disconnect. The disconnect is the person who wants to forget his day, forget the pains that came with the day, and forget what he's going to carry the next day as residual pain. He's drinking that night, right? He wants to go from his current agitated, anxious state into a state of forgetting and just existing for a bit. So what he's not looking for a brand and a value proposition. What he's looking for is kick per rupee. I have spent so much money, I want to get there faster. He's in a hurry. And
Totally.
whatever you say, however you gloss it up, there is a fundamental human problem that a brand cannot solve, where the product does not satisfy the requirement of the consumer.
So what I was saying is, as I'm threading these questions, right? So from the point of view of the bullseye segment, which is the man of the world, to the position that they have taken, which is to hero the light beer category, and beer obviously showed the way, right? The third part is what I liked is I think the brand core consistency for global brands probably comes in potentially solving the same problem. And oftentimes our propositions are emotional problems or emotional solutions. Our brands hero the emotional solutions to problems everyday humans face, right? So if everyday humans face a problem that they have grown apart because of their difference in mindsets, right? Consumer brands try to emotionally solve the problem by heroing that point of view, right? So the point of view that they hold globally is the fact that the world is increasingly becoming, polarized. The East and the West, the transgender versus the white man, and so on and so forth, right? So that problem is what the brand wishes to solve, emotional problem. And in India, the emotional problem is still the fact that even at the 1 degree of separation, we have very fundamental emotional problems which are threatening our basic peace of mind, and what bigger problem than the choice of careers, right? And this problem is becoming large because till one generation back, this opportunity was not there. And when I like to track how Indian employment has moved post independence, you had only government jobs. From government jobs, people moved into the defense forces, the public relations, the railways, and so on and so forth, right? Then came basic MNCs, and only now that we have gone to a space where everybody doesn't need to be a doctor and a engineer. Now you got people where you can be a gamer, a content maker, a DJ, and so on and so forth, right? While our parents still live in the previous generation. They still live in the generation where it is still that XY, there is only doctor, engineer, and the times are changing. And hence, I think the brand picked up a beautiful space, right, where they said we will solve the same global problem. We will solve it in an Indian context. What bigger Indian context? And by the way, we will also normalize the category, because if we can say that we are going to hero parents and children drinking together, there is no better way to normalize the category than that. Right? So was some of this thinking also resonating in your mind, and was this the education that you gave to the global team?
Yes. So the good thing was that the global team, at least the working committee, reported directly to the second. There was a gentleman called Gianluca who is the global CMO, and he was directly overseeing every region. So it was never that they were isolated from the process, and that's the beauty of this. When you're working with Indian teams on an Indian brand, what happens is everyone tries to toe one line. There is one line that one tries to toe, right? We say, okay, the CMO knows best, or the MD knows best, right? And when the MD says this is the voice of God, and we will try and make sure that all of that is carried. What happens in a global brand is the global CMO is that voice of God, who is, from his many years of experience, knows that he doesn't know the answer. And that changes the body of that conversation completely, right? So while he's a great authority figure and he has built that brand, or he is trusted by the Heineken family and by the management, what he carries into the conversation is the fact that there are highly trained and highly experienced professionals running this. So he's looking at empirical data. The way they look at it is very different. So everything is micro-lensed. If you do a survey within a set of customers, that is recorded and it is played back. So nothing is trivial. In the chain of command, nothing is trivial. Everything is given equal importance, and it is analyzed and verified and every thought process is constructed in the way it is. So it's very methodical. There's a design thinking process to it, right? So I've really enjoyed that a lot about brands, but it can also frustrate.
Cool. So the other question that I had is on the mix itself, right? Now, in my opinion, when I see from outside, I see three challenges with the mix. Okay, the first challenge with the mix, with the product and the brand mix. Okay, the first challenge that I would see as external marketeer is the fact that the taste is bitter. Yeah, Indians have a sweet palate. One of the reasons why we say love Chivas Regal or a Jack Daniels is because of the sweet overnote. Yeah, while we've been taught that Johnny Walker is the best whiskey, but it is something which is more of a marriage function whiskey. It's not necessarily the savoring whiskey that a lot of people pick up, right? Similarly, beer, why it is so loved is because it's a wheat beer, international flavor, and yet very sweet. Yeah. Now Heineken has got a fundamental challenge, in my opinion. It's a very bitter whiskey, beer. It's got a very bitter note. Secondly, Heineken is a tough word to pronounce for most people, right? Third is there is no simple mnemonics. Like, for example, the star on Heineken, I don't think there is any relevance infused in it per se, while the Bira Monkey has got a lot of relevance. So I just see a Bira Monkey, I pick it up, right? So there is no design assets which are very easy to teach people. Some of these challenges in terms of the bitterness of the whiskey, the tough name, for example, Budweiser, the Elephant or the Magnum, these are all sub-brand but then easier words, versus the mother brand names which are more difficult to pronounce, right? So some of these crutches in terms of, we want a sweeter beer, or we want easier brand mnemonic, or we want maybe at least a sub-brand which is easier for us to sell. Was these problems discussed, or they raised by the marketing or the sales teams, and did we at least ponder or have a debate before we decided to say we'll take the mix what it is?
Fabulous question. So you're right. In fact, there were recordings that we had of people saying Heineken. It's hilarious to outright obscene. Some of the pronunciations are crazy because it's not fair to the Indian audience to have to struggle with Heineken.
Right.
Heineken, I think, was the most affected of the lot.
Smirnoff and Diageo, whenever you used to meet consumers, UP is the biggest market, used to be always called Smirnoff.
Yeah.
Smirnoff. It's like the Simran from DDLJ. That's all the people could remember. They could not remember Smirnoff. So I can imagine Heineken would be even more difficult.
It was very difficult, and you're right. And every brand has smashables. What we call brand assets. Heineken has the green. Heineken has the type fonts. The typeset font, and it has the star. The sad part is you can't use the star in isolation anyway. And there are very stringent guidelines, which is what I was saying. The guardrails are set in stone, and they cannot be even negotiate. You can't negotiate with the global brand assets team on what is possible and what is not possible. And PWA used to handle the assets factory. Heineken has an assets factory globally. So every time you need an artwork to be created, you don't even get access to the artwork. You upload the specifications, the campaign. They do it. The centralized studio does it and gives you the artwork files. So there is absolutely no scope for you to exclude anything. You can't even, funny thing is with billboards, for example, in India, you could get away by having the English name and then putting the Kannada typeset version, right? Heineken, phonically, or in Punjabi. We didn't have that leeway. So the brand is very tightly straitjacketed. And so these were the kind of, so there was a time when, and I'm glad you asked this question, Saurabh, because what was happening was before Publicis came on and we took on the Heineken mandate, it was a pitch, and the question we were asked to solve at that stage was the pitch brief to us. The brief to the agency was, this is the Heineken man of the world. Now show us what this means in India. And we had Partha Sinha at that time as the chief strategy officer. He's a brilliant mind and he's a fabulous dissector of Indian culture. He's a very good culture vulture. So he dissected the man of the world for Heineken. And, we were awarded the business. I think the bigger question to have asked at that stage, which none of us were aware of, which came to light later, was how do we solve for Heineken's alienness in a market like India? It was very alien, right? It was one of the first to be in India, very similar to the Smirnoff problem, because it's got alphabets that don't phonically look like anything that you've known, right? The ending was not. So we had that problem. we had very stringent brand guidelines that we needed to follow. You couldn't take the star out, and you couldn't. So there were a lot of logistical challenges. And
so, Saurabh, I'm just curious to know the takeaways and learnings from this interesting conversation. The category is different and the purpose is different. So, what are the learnings from this particular conversation?
Devleena, when it comes to a category like alcohol, right, it is very important for us to understand what is the role it plays in the consumer's life. And the role that it plays in consumer's life is often that of socializing, enabling connections, enabling people to bond with each other, right? And I think if you are able to hook onto this brand core, you're typically able to do a good job, and you've seen that here. It acts like a social lubricant. That's what Heineken did well. And the connection between a parents and child, I think, was a very nice narrative to pick up. The second learning for me was really about the fact that when you have global brands and global mandates, you have to understand what is the global point of view. Who is the aspirational consumer? What is the segmentation all about? And how do you translate that into the local nuance? I think that is again something that the brand did really well. Yeah. The third thing for me is the fact that, oftentimes there are holy cows. There is a particular way in which a global team looks at things, but then you have to bring the local knowledge to the fore, and that is done through research. So what is the role of research in unlocking consumer understanding, unlocking creativity, and building impactful campaigns eventually? I think that is for me the third learning. So, in summary, one, understand the role of your brand in the consumer's life and in society. Use that to unlock behavior change. Second, understand what is the global view on the consumer, what is this segmentation all about, and what is the bullseye Indian consumer, a local consumer that you are tracking. And finally, figure out the way of research and understanding the right consumer insight, which talks to the global brand positioning, but really unlocks a behavior change in the local context. I think that is something that Theresa has helped us understand. It's really been a fascinating conversation. I think a lot to learn from marketeers and budding marketeers.
Superb, Saurabh. And I can't agree more. A lot to learn. I mean, there are so many learnings we have shared, and yet so much to learn from you and from our guests as well. So thank you for constantly helping us with these, churning of the learnings and takeaways with us. Yeah, thank you for being here.
All right, looking forward to next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, Saurabh, and thank you to our viewers and listeners for patiently listening to us and watching us. Thank you.